It was on a trip to the shrine where we hoped for divine favor that my vision returned. My spouse, Juniper, remained prostrate on the floor, offering her prayers as she always did. She murmured, "I, your devoted, am prepared to sacrifice a decade of my own existence for the well-being of my beloved." Visiting this shrine and offering prayers on our anniversary of marriage had turned into an annual practice for us. The shrine's priest, a figure we knew well, commended Juniper for her steadfast loyalty to me, and the sightseers in the vicinity were profoundly touched by her act. They assisted Juniper in affixing the prayer card to the highest point of the shrine's ancient ginkgo tree. The card was inscribed with the name Ren. However, Ren isn't even my name. Ren was Juniper's former sweetheart. I had planned to reveal my regained sight as a surprise to her, but I was paralyzed with shock as events played out before me. Her companion, who had accompanied us, blatantly mouthed something directly in my presence, her lips shaping the phrase, "You're quite daring. Aren't you concerned about being discovered?" Juniper, with a light and cheerful demeanor, mouthed back, "Why would I be scared? He cannot see. Even if he realizes, he wouldn't abandon me." Her self-assured demeanor was something I perceived all too distinctly, and a wave of lightheadedness swept over me. My gait momentarily wavered, and Juniper swiftly moved to support me. That familiar citrus scent enveloped me, but I was overwhelmed by feelings of acrimony and revulsion. She inquired with concern, "Why didn't you mention you were feeling unwell? We should go to the clinic together." My immediate reaction was, "But weren't we scheduled to have a meal with our acquaintances this evening, right?" "My name is Finn. What are you talking about?" Her concerned gaze appeared sincere, unlike anything I'd observed previously. Over our time together, she had consistently prioritized me, never once displaying any contempt for my visual impairment. She had constantly been present, looking after me, making me believe that I was the center of her universe. However, in the following instant, she motioned for a woman who had been trailing behind her to assist me into the vehicle. What chilled me to the core was that this woman's voice was indistinguishable from Juniper's. She stated, "How could a meal be more significant than your well-being? You are my partner, and I will perpetually be by your side. Let's proceed to the clinic." She exerted herself to help me into the vehicle, her arm firmly encircling mine, her head reclining on my shoulder. Outside the vehicle, Juniper was still communicating with her companion, forming the words, "Proceed with the festivities for Ren's birthday." At that instant, everything fell into place. Now, I comprehended everything. Why Juniper, despite her professional obligations, was almost perpetually by my side. Why, as my spouse, she had attended to me so meticulously over the preceding 10 years without ever exhibiting any signs of weariness. It was incredibly simple to mislead a person without sight. I reclined in the vehicle, observing the shifting landscape outside. For someone who had just recovered his vision, everything appeared extraordinarily novel. However, I harbored no desire to appreciate any of it. The dark glasses I wore effectively concealed my newly restored eyes. I purged my thoughts, permitting my recollections to draw me back to that name, Ren. The initial instance I encountered his name, my vision was still intact. He was a prominent individual at our educational institution, as radiant and intelligent as the sun. The subsequent occasion I encountered his name was following my loss of sight, when a companion informed me that Juniper had been involved with Ren. However, by that point, Juniper was already my significant other. That evening, Juniper did not return, and I had steeled myself for a separation. Nevertheless, in the morning, Juniper arrived home, disoriented and forlorn, and collapsed into my embrace, weeping uncontrollably. She declared, "Finn, you are all that remains for me. Will you wed me?" She hadn't been with Ren, but had, instead, dispatched him overseas. Following his departure the previous afternoon, she had indulged in alcohol and wept in solitude. She hadn't been unfaithful. She had merely required closure from an adolescent infatuation. At that juncture, I had innocently presumed she elected to remain with me because her affection for me surpassed her affection for Ren. She would be devastated by Ren's departure, but perpetually so detached when it concerned me. Occasionally, during our visits to her relatives for festive occasions, The youngsters in her family's homes, who were frequently quite impish, would perpetrate cruel jests on me due to my visual impairment. Whenever I expressed anger and attempted to reprimand them, she would interject, "They're merely children, Finn. Do you not adore children?" However, I was aware of the reality. It was Ren who had conveyed to her his fondness for children, and I had reiterated to her my aversion to individuals exploiting my impairment for amusement. Yet she invariably maintained an innocent facade, asserting she had simply overlooked and imploring me not to be so severe. I recognized then that only deliberate actions could be so readily forgotten. How naive I was, feigning belief in her forgetfulness. She hadn't forgotten. She simply elected to retain the memory of someone else. The woman who had escorted me home opened the door, and I remained immobile. I even began to question whether my restored vision was malfunctioning, so I inquired, "What is the color palette of our home's interior?" She responded, her voice slightly tremulous. "It's the pale azure and white scheme you adore. A minimalist aesthetic." Deceiver. The dark, solid wood furnishings and the antiquated decor bore no resemblance to a light-hued minimalist design. I recalled when Juniper had solicited my input on the interior design. I had smiled wryly and stated, "I am visually impaired. I can perceive nothing, and life has forfeited its hues. Simply select what you prefer." At that juncture, she had pouted and expressed in a tearful tone, "But even though you cannot see, you should reside in an environment where you feel serene. Even if your eyes cannot perceive it, your spirit will still discover tranquility." We had deliberated and concurred on a minimalist design approach. However, now I perceived the reality. It had all been a fabrication, and I had been thoroughly misled, conversing with the artisans with appreciation, believing she was accommodating my sentiments. But now, the residence I had inhabited for so long was adorned in Ren's preferred style. I abruptly comprehended why the artisans had been so indifferent when they concurred with me. I had presumed they disparaged my selection, but I was the one who had been duped and hadn't even recognized it. I had been conversing with myself like an imbecile. The woman assisted me into the sleeping quarters, and I perched on the edge of the bed, my gaze fixated on the framed image on the wall. What should have been a matrimonial photograph was now superseded by an image of a man and a woman clasping hands. Ira seethed within my chest, impeding my respiration. I could scarcely reconcile myself to the fact that I had been subsisting in a deception for all this duration. As the daylight waned with the descending sun, I perceived the door opening. The woman had departed, and now Juniper had returned. She hastened to my side, clambered into my embrace, and murmured, "My beloved, I cherish you profoundly." However, her familiar citrus scent was now eclipsed by an acrid odor of smoke. Before I could articulate, she hummed a lively melody and exited the room. "I shall uncork a bottle of wine, my beloved. Let us commemorate our anniversary at home." Her mobile device, which she had abandoned on the bed, vibrated. The initial thing I observed was her lock screen, the posterior of a man. It wasn't me. Subsequently, 3 messages arrived. The first read, "Juniper, I am immensely grateful for your presence on my birthday. Your companionship has rendered this the most joyous birthday I've experienced in years." The second, "I have returned to the nation. Are you still intending to remain with your surrogate?" The third, "We have squandered numerous prospects in the past. I believe we both merit an opportunity to rectify our transgressions." My heart plummeted. Subsequently, I perceived Juniper summoning me from outside, beckoning me to supper. I resolved to myself that I would interrogate her about everything this day. I could not permit these years of my existence to become a mockery. At the very least, it should conclude with a semblance of decorum. However, when I opened the door, I froze once more. Reclining on the sofa was a man who bore a 70 to 80% resemblance to me, grinning at me with a provocative sneer. Juniper declared, "This is my distant relative. He is joining us for supper this evening." She emerged from the kitchen and teasingly inquired, "Finn, why are you still donning those dark glasses indoors?" I suppressed my ire and responded, "My eyes are experiencing heightened discomfort today. The feline I nurtured, Saffron, brushed against my trousers, silently consoling me. Even the feline could discern the anomaly. But my spouse, the individual who should be closest to me, exhibited no response. She merely uttered, "Oh," before proceeding to welcome her relative to supper. Juniper, who typically avoided any contact with water when it came to culinary endeavors, had prepared an extensive array of dishes this evening. Observing the two of them exchanging surreptitious glances across the table, I forfeited all inclination to interrogate her. Instead, waves of revulsion surged within my abdomen. Our domestic helper, a distant relation of Juniper, infrequently prepared meals punctually, and I frequently experienced hunger, consequently developing a gastric ailment. Perhaps she did not wish for me to voice grievances about her. Ultimately, she commenced serving me victuals that were not fresh. The meat consistently emitted a sour, decayed odor. So I terminated her employment in a fit of exasperation. I anticipated Juniper would express remorse upon her return, but instead, her initial reaction was to berate me for causing difficulty for an elderly woman, accusing me of being overly critical, squandering food, and failing to comprehend the adversities of others. However, Juniper, who was so considerate of others' hardships and abhorred waste, had discarded an entire dish of meat because Wren had remarked that there was a strand of hair on one of the poultry wings. I departed prematurely, not wishing to intrude upon their amiable moments. That night, I retired early. I yearned to conclude everything on our anniversary. Disjointed recollections from my collegiate days metamorphosed into reveries. I awoke multiple times throughout the night. Juniper had been the belle of C University, radiant and exquisite, like a sunbeam in springtime. At that juncture, everyone asserted that the campus beauty should be paired with the preeminent scholar, and Juniper and Wren constituted the quintessential couple. It was also then that individuals began remarking on my resemblance to Wren. However, why was it that no one ever posited that Wren resembled me back then? I had harbored jealousy towards Wren because I, too, harbored affection for Juniper, and I yearned to avow my sentiments to her. However, following my loss of sight in the conflagration, I interred my sentiments for her deep within. At that time, when I departed from the educational institution due to my impairment, individuals pointed and whispered behind my back, some with commiseration, others with derision. However, it was Juniper who intervened to silence them. She proclaimed, "You regard misfortune as a jest, believing it elevates you." However, capricious destiny favors no one. Today, you may bask in the luminescence, but tomorrow, you might descend into the shadows just as readily. In the ensuing hush, she clasped my hand and escorted me out of the institution. I had presumed it was merely a fleeting moment of compassion, but she persisted in entering my existence. I confessed my sentiments to her, and she exuberantly consented to be with me. However, subsequently, I discovered that she had done so to defy her progenitors. At that juncture, both Wren and I shared a comparable plight, both becoming vocally impaired following the blaze. Her progenitors disapproved of her association with Wren, so she elected to seek out someone akin to me, a visually impaired individual, to defy them. However, perhaps even she did not anticipate that this act of defiance would endure for a decade. And now, with Wren's return to the nation, all of her actions had already presaged the denouement of our narrative. I arose prematurely the subsequent day, endorsed the separation documents, and then conveyed Saffron to depart. I encountered Wren once more. He had sojourned in the adjacent guest quarters last night, and now he was obstructing my path with a mischievous smirk, extending his foot before me. I trampled his foot without compunction, and he collapsed to the floor in agony but emitted no sound. Juniper, upon hearing the commotion, hastened from the sleeping quarters, exclaiming, "Wren!" She shoved me aside unceremoniously and assisted Wren to his feet. In a frantic tone, she rebuked me. "Finn, can you not be more vigilant? You have collided with my relative." I regarded them with apathy, devoid of the slightest vestige of sorrow. I merely found it risible. After all, who in their right mind would admonish a visually impaired person to be more vigilant? She had bolted from her bed upon hearing the disturbance, but naturally she had not perceived the separation documents on the bedside table. The manner in which she was so preoccupied with Wren illuminated her true disposition. I was relieved I had regained my senses. Departing from her now was not belated. Ren inscribed something on her palm, and I could distinctly discern it read, "With your presence, I experience no discomfort whatsoever." Juniper, her eyes reddened, embraced him tightly and lamented, "Finn, extend your apologies to my relative immediately." I disregarded her and proceeded towards the egress. She did not inquire about my destination, merely expectorated more acrimonious pronouncements. "Are you both visually and auditorily impaired now? You had best never return." 3 days following my departure from home, I secured lodgings in a modest dwelling and commenced disseminating my credentials extensively. Due to my lack of a collegiate degree, my prospects were constrained, and only one establishment was amenable to employing me as a security officer. Each day, following my shift, it was merely Saffron and me. During this period, Juniper did not seek me out. Irrespective of whether she was cognizant of my restored vision or not, she would not seek me out. Just as when she was so unequivocally certain to her companions that I would not dare to abandon her, she perpetually harbored the unshakable conviction that I would capitulate first. One day, I conveyed Saffron to the animal emporium for ablutions. While awaiting, I observed Ren entering, clutching a stray canine. Juniper accompanied him. They did not perceive me, and I lowered my headwear so I could distinctly observe every interaction between them. Ren inscribed something on her palm, and she responded with gentleness. She expressed, "Ren, you are so benevolent to rescue stray canines. You are nothing like that visually impaired individual. He is vindictive. I shall never converse with him again. You jeopardized your existence in that conflagration to rescue me, and consequently forfeited your voice. I am deeply remorseful. Back then, I merely yearned to convey to you that I would dedicate my entire existence to compensating you." Ren advanced to embrace Juniper, and she nestled into his arms obediently. After an extended duration, Juniper, with reddened eyes, disengaged from him to retire to the restroom and regain her composure. Subsequently, my mobile device rang. She inquired, "Beloved, what is this regarding the separation documents? Do not alarm me, all right? I am genuinely apprehensive about you. Please return." What was this? Remorse following perfidy? I chuckled and retorted, "Return to accomplish what? To observe you adorning the residence with images of your erstwhile paramour?" Her voice quivered as she inquired, "You have regained your sight?" I provided a nonchalant response, and as I glanced upwards, I perceived Ren's smile vanish, and he hurled the stray canine to the floor. At that instant, he appeared despondent and disgustedly dusted off his sleeve. What astonished me even more was that Ren actually articulated. He declared, "Just euthanize it, then inform my significant other that it could not be salvaged. I harbor no interest in nurturing this unsanitary creature." He was not vocally impaired. He had been feigning, and now he was disputing with the personnel with utter assurance. At this juncture, Juniper's voice emanated from the other end of the mobile device, her words contorted and unreasonable. She asserted, "Indeed, I should not have displayed his photographs. That was my transgression. However, can you genuinely deceive me? I detest being deceived more than anything. Why did you not inform me of your restored sight earlier? Was it amusing to trifle with me? I have been so apprehensive about you, and I cannot fathom that you are this type of individual. You repulse me. If you were truly a man, you would return and extend your apologies presently." I abruptly scoffed and promptly mimicked her tone, stating, "Indeed, I should not have deceived you. But can you genuinely vociferate at me?" Juniper gnashed her teeth and stammered, You. I persisted. "Since you abhor being deceived so profoundly, allow me to play something edifying for you." I then held up the mobile device in Ren's direction, permitting her to perceive the sounds of Ren and the personnel disputing. I smiled and stated, "Your Ren's voice is unimpaired now. Do you surmise that the shrine's supplications were efficacious, or has he merely been feigning ailment to mislead you?" At that instant, Ren observed Saffron emerging from the ablutions and perceived me. He hastened over, disconnecting my call, and inquired, "You are not genuinely visually impaired, are you?" I regarded him with amusement and gestured towards the restroom, stating, I was cured, but you have likely been feigning all along, correct? Do you believe I disclosed this to Juniper? Ren smiled derisively and asserted, do you believe she will believe me or you? You will perpetually be the proxy. I guffawed and stated, it is inconsequential. Even if I am a proxy, I am still obtaining what I desire. It is preferable to you hastening back to scavenge refuse. Ren's countenance cracked, and he extended his grasp to seize my collar, endeavoring to assail me. Over the years, I had neglected physical conditioning due to my impairment, and I was no match for him in terms of vigor. However, I promptly summoned Saffron, and in the subsequent instant, 6 lacerations appeared across Ren's visage. He stumbled back, groaning in agony. Just as I was about to step forward to deliver a kick, a furious voice resonated. Finn, you are truly repulsive. What are you doing? Assaulting someone immediately after regaining your vision? You will reap what you sow. Beside her, Ren gestured, causing Juniper's eyes to redden. If she had merely glanced at me for a moment longer, she would have noticed the disarray of my collar, but she did not. She continued, you just accused Ren of not being mute, but if he wasn't mute, why didn't he cry out for assistance when you were attacking him? Observe what you have perpetrated against him. Finn, how did you devolve into this? I could not be troubled to respond. I used to believe she comprehended me well, but that wasn't her at all. I had believed she comprehended Ren better, but she couldn't even discern the sound of his voice over the telephone. Realizing this, I shook my head in disbelief, but Juniper misinterpreted my actions. She stated, you have recognized your transgression, correct? Apologize now, and I can feign that nothing ever transpired, including the separation. I was nearly amused. I declared, you still do not comprehend. I genuinely desire a separation. I continued, since I recovered my vision, I have observed it all, the woman voice actor you have to substitute you. Those times you sent me to do prayers for Ren and the home decor with all Ren's pictures. It is evident that we are concluded. Only then did a semblance of trepidation manifest in her eyes. Her voice trembled as she uttered, those were merely antiquated adornments. I am different now. I can elucidate. I sneered. Elucidate how you deceived a visually impaired individual? I disregarded her and the complacent Ren and turned to depart. Subsequently, Juniper contacted me numerous times, but I obstructed her number. She then utilized Ren's mobile device to contact me. She stated, Finn, the separation documents were misplaced. I printed a fresh copy. Can you return and endorse it? At that juncture, I was at my place of employment, so I did not directly respond to Juniper's call, but instead dispatched the company's address. I stated, simply forward it here after you endorse it. She inquired, you detest me so intensely that you will not even return to see me once? I could not be bothered to answer her and terminated the call. As a security officer, I possessed multiple responsibilities and was tasked with preserving order. I was no one's menial and certainly not someone she could summon at her convenience. The subsequent moment, my superior vociferated, what are you meandering around for? Are you visually impaired? Proceed over here and park the vehicle. Understood. There was nothing I could do. After all, I also functioned as a valet. Not long after I parked the vehicle, the mobile device rang once more. This time, it wasn't Juniper calling. Ren's voice emanated, dripping with sarcasm. I just perceived your text message. You are employed at the same establishment as me. However, I recall that the establishment is not recruiting any new personnel. They have only been hiring security detail. As he concluded his sentence, I locked gazes with Ren, who was driving up. He raised an eyebrow at me, clearly complacent, and exited the vehicle. The sunlight reflected off his opulent suit, which made me, in my drab security uniform, stand out even more. With a malevolent smile, he stated, Hey, diminutive security guard, park my vehicle expeditiously. His tone was as if he were commanding a canine, but regrettably, I still required this employment. I reluctantly entered his vehicle and parked it, gritting my teeth. The next second, he smiled again and stated, Hey, diminutive security guard, retrieve my vehicle. I need to depart for a business engagement. He wasn't even feigning to conceal his demeanor anymore. But honestly, I didn't care to challenge him on it. If Juniper could believe that a mute individual was the executive of a publicly traded company, what couldn't she believe? I clenched my teeth and retrieved the vehicle for him. This cycle reiterated, and I became adept at maneuvering in and out of the garage. By midday, Ren had procured a small stool, reclining to consume food and drink while directing me to reverse the vehicle into the garage. I was incensed. Was he not going to permit me to consume lunch? Fine, you will not consume either. I slammed the vehicle forward and braked abruptly, causing him to spill his food all over himself and ruining his extravagant suit. I grinned at him. Apologies, Mr. Ito, my legs were trembling. His face turned crimson with rage, and he rushed over, extracting me from the vehicle and delivering a punch to my abdomen. The agony caused me to stagger back, and I inadvertently dented his car door. Ren, furious, seized my hair and attempted to slam my head into the door. But when he realized it was his vehicle, his movement stalled for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, I suddenly recalled my cherished Saffron and I spun around, grasping his face. It devolved into a tug of war, a punch from him, a scratch from me. Eventually, I had my hands on his nose and he was constricting my neck. My face was contused and tumescent, and his head was bleeding. Finally, I could no longer maintain my grip and collapsed to the ground. Just before I forfeited consciousness, I perceived a familiar figure hastening toward me. I awoke in a familiar infirmary room, the aroma of lilies permeating the air. This was the infirmary I had frequented countless times during my collegiate days. Every time Juniper visited me, she would invariably bring a bouquet of lilies. Was it her who rescued me? I hurled the lilies to the floor and struggled to arise and depart. But just as I was about to move, the door opened and it wasn't her who entered. The individual glanced at the lilies on the floor and stated, "You have recuperated. Do not move." It was Juniper's stand-in, still emulating Juniper's tone of voice. I shook my head and declared, "Even if it was Juniper who rescued me, I still desire a separation." To my astonishment, she suddenly smiled. She stated, "It wasn't her. It was I who rescued you." Perhaps realizing she hadn't expressed herself effectively, she swiftly added, "I am not attempting to elicit your gratitude. I am merely recompensing your benevolence." I scratched my head in bewilderment. She chuckled softly and stated, "Senior, you preserved my existence during the university conflagration." Then it struck me. During the fire in the classroom, I had rushed in, couldn't locate Juniper, but encountered another girl. Just then, a beam collapsed, and I propelled her out of harm's way but ended up becoming ensnared beneath the debris. That's how I forfeited my vision. She leaned in playfully and stated, "If this were antiquity, I would probably offer myself to you, but back then, you were already with Juniper." She paused for a moment before continuing. "So I applied to be her secretary and became her stand-in. I have been like a specter, perpetually by your side. Isn't that ludicrous?" I sat there stunned, unable to process what she was conveying. With a flushed countenance, she awkwardly apologized. "I am remorseful for concealing this from you all these years." I lowered my head and inquired, "How long have you been undertaking this?" She replied, "Since you became visually impaired at university." I inquired again, "When I was with you, when was it genuinely you, and when was it her?" She stated, "For the initial 3 years, it was predominantly me, though occasionally she would intercede for a visit." Her voice grew more subdued. At that instant, everything began to coalesce. No wonder Juniper's demeanor always seemed so erratic. The individual I had been enamored with all this time was her, not Juniper. I examined her name tag, Anna. Then I discerned the cicatrix on her left hand. Suddenly I recalled something from the day I departed from the university. Juniper had stood up and articulated something as she clasped my hand, and I had felt her palm was irregular. I inquired, "Who assisted me in ridding myself of the individuals who were deriding me when I withdrew?" It was I. I am remorseful for employing her voice back then. I am cognizant that you harbored affection for her, so I endeavored to approach you in that manner. After confessing, Anna promptly answered a telephone call and hastily departed. I could discern that she was abashed, and for a moment, I surmised she would not return. However, to my surprise, she visited me daily at the infirmary. I could not tolerate the infirmary fare, so she commenced preparing meals for me herself. The meals were replete with familiar savors. I recalled the day Juniper had prepared a meal for Wren, the meal comprising mostly constituents to which I was allergic. No wonder it was like that. It transpired that every meal Juniper had ostensibly prepared for me originated from Anna. Every detail that led me to believe Juniper cherished me was, in actuality, Anna's affection for me. Until the day I was discharged, Juniper never visited me. Instead, the separation documents were dispatched to the infirmary. I completed them and conveyed them to Wren at his place of employment. He stated, "Finally, you have regained your senses." Although Wren was also swathed in bandages, he still appeared complacent, and he clearly harbored no intention of releasing me from his grasp. He persisted in reclining beside me, commanding me to practice maneuvering in and out. Subsequently, perceiving that I was becoming more proficient, even managing to observe brief videos while parking, he urgently transferred me to his department to assist with sundry tasks and logistics. That day, I was drenched in perspiration from all the labor. After barely concluding, he instructed me to hasten and prepare 2 cups of tea for a client, even demanding the most recondite tea leaves. When I entered with the 2 cups of tea, he vociferated at me. "What is amiss with you? How can 3 individuals imbibe from 2 cups of tea? Are you not cognizant that it is discourteous to neglect our esteemed guest?" Infuriated, I glared at him and turned to depart, but suddenly he tripped me and the tea splashed all over the client. I was on the verge of erupting when he preemptively shouted, "You imbecile, what else can you do?" He raised his fist, but just then, a feminine voice resounded from the doorway. She snorted and stated, "Is this how your establishment treats its subordinates? I believe it is most judicious to terminate the collaboration." I turned around to see Anna entering, her presence commanding deference. In the subsequent moment, the client swiftly genuflected and addressed her as Miss Anna. Wren immediately commenced apologizing. "It is a misinterpretation." Anna disregarded him, escorted me outside, and meticulously treated the laceration on my arm from the spilled tea. She regarded me with solicitude and stated, "Senior, it must be exceedingly painful, correct?" I replied, "It is inconsequential. I would not have noticed had you not mentioned it." She appeared even more perturbed and stated, "You are so resilient, enduring such a profound wound without uttering a word." I gazed at the barely perceptible laceration, lost in contemplation. When we emerged, we observed the superior reprimanding Wren at the doorway. Wren hastened over, apologizing so profusely that he nearly prostrated himself. However, the next second, Anna turned to me and inquired, "Did you perceive someone articulating?" I immediately comprehended what Anna implied. She was fully cognizant of what had transpired with Wren. I smiled and shook my head. "Miss Anna, you are jesting. Mr. Ito never articulates." Anna then promptly terminated the accord with Wren. As a consequence, Wren was demoted and erupted with indignation. However, that was not my concern. I had already transitioned to employment at Anna's establishment. I subsequently learned that Wren was scheming to enlist someone to deal with me, or rather, to renegotiate the accord in an endeavor to salvage his position. To my astonishment, it was Juniper who sought me out on Wren's behalf. She gazed at Anna, now metamorphosed into a domineering female executive, with surprise, then sneered when she perceived me. She declared, "What executive? You are merely a paramour, clinging to someone else's spouse. Do you possess no shame?" Anna gnashed her teeth and retorted, "Miss Liu, if you persist in uttering inanities, I shall have security eject you." Juniper disregarded Anna and redirected her attention to me. "Anna, you truly possess a venomous mind. You have been clinging to my spouse for all these years, merely to usurp him. However, do you believe that if I beckon him, he will return to me?" As she spoke, she proceeded towards the doorway, waving at me. Without uttering a word, I followed her, leaving Anna behind. Once outside, Juniper flung herself into my embrace and stated, "Finn, I was cognizant that you still cherish me." She was donning the garment I had selected for her. Back when I was visually impaired, she had clasped my hand and guided me through the emporium, permitting me to feel each garment, and she had chosen this one. Even though I had never beheld it, I recognized it at first glance. She stated, "My dear, you comprehend me. I was merely incensed previously." She seldom addressed me as "my dear," and her saccharine words felt like a reminiscence of when we had just wedded. However, the next second, she inquired, "Can you implore Anna not to rescind Ren's contract?" I replied, "Negative." "Why not?" "Ren is mute. He labored assiduously to attain the supervisory position." I inquired, "So what?" She stated, "How can you be so callous? Why will you not leave him any recourse?" I answered, "So what?" She gnashed her teeth, but maintained her composure and stated, "My dear, I implore you. I owe Ren this much, just this once. You cherish me so profoundly. You will assist me, correct?" I was dumbfounded. I retorted, "No, I do not cherish you. I only accompanied you because I did not wish for you to refer to Anna as a paramour in my presence." I could discern that Anna harbored sentiments for me and had done a great deal for me. I could not accept her being labeled a paramour, so I elected to distance myself from Juniper for the present. I stated, "The separation documents have already been endorsed, correct? We shall officially obtain the certificate soon." Juniper widened her eyes and inquired, "Endorsed? When did I endorse it?" I nodded and stated, "It is inconsequential. We can endorse it officially when we proceed to the Civil Affairs Office." "How about 9 a.m. tomorrow?" She couldn't believe it. She tugged at my sleeve and stated, "Are you in such haste to abandon me? I no longer desire your assistance for Ren. Will you return, please?" She realized I had truly resolved to depart. She commenced weeping, disregarding her image any longer. She stated, "I cherish you. I genuinely cannot subsist without you. What am I supposed to do without you?" She had become so habituated to having the luminaries illuminated in the residence every evening, awaiting her, and being treated as the sole luminescence in my existence. She denominated it love, but I denominated it habituation. Her weeping attracted a throng, and they commenced whispering, likely presuming I was a callous individual who had betrayed her. I scrutinized the throng congregating around us and cleared my throat. I stated, "Observe what you are articulating. Without me, you still possess Ren, do you not? When I was visually impaired, you conveyed me to supplicate, but you inscribed Ren's name where I could not perceive. Our matrimonial photograph on the wall, do you recall? It was your image with Ren, not mine. The most brazen thing? You invited Ren over to consume at home, presuming I could not see, and you nourished each other directly in front of me. And now you approach me, inquiring what you will do without me. What is the matter? Without me, Ren would be incapable of accomplishing anything, would he?" As I ranted, Anna advanced, extracting Juniper from my grasp. She appended, "On our anniversary of marriage, when you proceeded to commemorate Ren's birthday, did you ever contemplate how he languished in the obscurity alone? And when he departed, what did you and Ren perpetrate in the residence? Should I even articulate it? You perpetrated so many abhorrent acts prior to the separation, and now you regret it and yearn to atone for it? Do you even merit it?" Anna's pronouncements rendered Juniper speechless. Over all these years, Anna had perpetually been by my side, and she comprehended Juniper better than anyone. The throng, now cognizant of the verity, commenced dispersing, casting sympathetic glances in my direction. However, Juniper still would not reconcile herself to reality. She stated, "No, Finn still cherishes me. We still possess an opportunity." I was speechless. It was too belated for that now. I did not respond, but Anna positioned herself before me, continuing her verbal onslaught. She stated, "You genuinely should undergo a cerebral examination. However, then again, anyone who believes a mute individual could be a corporate executive is bound to be a trifle sluggish." Just then, Anna's mobile device rang. She answered it on speakerphone, and to my astonishment, it was Ren extending his apologies. He stated, "Miss Anna, I am remorseful for what transpired previously. Our establishment will endeavor to ameliorate how we treat employees, but when it pertains to commerce, we will assuredly provide an exemplary experience for your enterprise." Anna ensured it was on speakerphone, and I perceived Juniper's countenance turn vivid red. She compressed her lips together, cast one final glance at me, and then departed. Perhaps she was contemplating, as I had stated previously, if only she had trusted me back then. However, there were no ifs now. I observed her departure, but I felt nothing. No gratification, no elation. Perhaps it was because Juniper and Wren had become so inconsequential to me. Anna nudged my arm and inquired, do you surmise I was excessively acrimonious just now? I shook my head and smiled. I believe you could have been even more acrimonious. Miss Anna, you were excessively courteous. Juniper, still declining to separate, persisted in reaching out to me day after day, endeavoring to rekindle my affections. She would dedicate hours to preparing lunch for me, awaiting outside the establishment, merely so I could consume the sustenance she had personally prepared. But I simply glanced at it and discarded it into the refuse. She stared at me, eyes wide, and asked, "How could you treat me this way?" I remained unfazed and replied, "I do not consume seafood. Are you unaware that I am allergic to it?" If her sudden attempt to make amends for all the harm she had caused over the years could truly erase everything, then the divorce office would have been closed long ago. But forgetting the pain once the wound heals doesn't apply to me. It works perfectly fine for her, though. For example, right now, Wren is by her side, standing up for her. He said, "Juniper, just divorce him. I won't let you remain so humble." Juniper shook her head, persisting every day, waiting for me downstairs at the office. Eventually, one day, she got heat stroke. Without hesitation, Wren gathered people to cause a scene at my office, accusing me of not cherishing our relationship and claiming that I was only working at the company because I was relying on a wealthy woman. One of my colleagues immediately threw my performance review at him, saying, "I heard you and Finn went to the same university. You didn't even finish university, but my performance is multiple times better than his. There are some people who, when their contract goes wrong, beg women to fix it but have the nerve to mock others." The company's security promptly escorted them out. I later heard that Wren lost his job because of his disruptive behavior. After this incident, Juniper finally made up her mind to divorce me. Then Wren, who had lost his job, began relentlessly pursuing her. How do I know? Because Juniper told me herself. She even thought I would care about it and told me that as long as I would come back to her, she would decisively reject Wren. I simply deleted all her contact information. Then I heard that they were together and even received a wedding invitation from them. The date was conveniently on the anniversary of Juniper and my relationship. Isn't that intentionally disgusting? While I was thinking whether to make an excuse, Anna showed up with a video recording. She said, "This was found at the old campus." Anna mentioned that the contents of the video involved me, both me and my ex-wife, along with her first love, Wren. The video clearly documented the truth about the fire. Wren had set it intentionally, and when the fire wasn't too big, he rushed in to save Juniper. Anna, puzzled, asked, "Why would he do that?" I replied, "Maybe to create the illusion of a hero saving the beauty." Anna nodded and then played the second part of the video, where I could be seen leaping to save Anna. She rewound it repeatedly, her eyes shining. She said, "Finn, that day you saved me but lost your sight. So I want to be your eyes in the dark, always by your side. When we went to pray that day, I hung a plaque for you. I prayed that you would regain your sight, see through the dirty people and things around you. Now that the truth is revealed, let's give the video to the police. Those who have hurt you should pay the price." I nodded and tightly held Anna's hand. I gathered the evidence and handed it over to the police. The whole incident was surprisingly simple. Juniper's parents had always looked down on Wren, who came from a poor background, so Wren wanted to change their view of him by saving her life. But he never expected to temporarily lose his voice, nor did he expect Juniper's mother to give him money as thanks for saving her daughter, only to then pressure him to leave Juniper and not force the issue. Under threats, he left the country. Later, when he returned from abroad, I was already with Juniper, so he pretended to be mute, hoping to make Juniper feel guilty and use that to destroy our marriage. What a sinister and terrifying person. And Juniper was about to marry such a man. On the day of their engagement, I sent her a text, hoping to see some drama. I wrote, "Have you ever thought that Wren might be the one who started the fire?" My intention was to see them fight at the engagement party, But to my surprise, Juniper replied instantly, "Why are you slandering Ren? Are you afraid I'll be happier than you?" I was speechless, but thinking about it, it was predictable. In the end, I still got to see the drama unfold. Her disbelief led to the police arresting Ren at the engagement party, right in front of everyone. At the time, Juniper was pregnant. She ignored her health and desperately hit Ren, but no matter how much she regretted it, it was too late. That night, Juniper called me. She said, "I'm sorry." I didn't understand what she meant. She continued, "I've always thought I owed Ren, but now it seems that it's he and I who owe you. If it weren't for him, you wouldn't have lost your sight, and I was so stubborn being with you out of spite. In the end, I hurt you and myself." She kept apologizing, but I didn't respond. In the end, she cried, "Actually, the child in my belly is yours. But by the time I found out, we had already separated. He promised to take care of the child, so I agreed to marry him." I said, "Don't joke because I'll really laugh." Juniper sobbed, unable to speak. She cried for a long time before she said again, "I'm not joking. The child really is yours. Please come back. I'll make it up to you." I patiently replied, "I think you might be mistaken. Don't think I'll believe this. Even if I did, what would change? You don't really think you can use the child to force me to come back, do you? Don't dream. You should just wait for Ren to get out of jail. You two are clearly meant for each other. And I'll say it again. Please stop disturbing my life." The big orange cat licked my palm. The moonlight reflected on the rose by the window. It was the first bouquet of flowers I had given Anna yesterday. Yesterday, I had proposed to Anna, and she had said yes. During my hardest days, she was the one who walked with me every step of the way. I would never let her down. On the other end of the phone, Juniper kept whispering, but I didn't reply. Then she hung up. Later, she had a miscarriage and was deeply affected, both physically and mentally. She went to another province alone. I heard she opened a flower shop selling only lilies. We received many lilies at our wedding, but I no longer liked lilies.